The last letter. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days in Portland, Oregon. Sarah Mitchell sat by the window of her small apartment, watching droplets race down the glass, her fingers wrapped around a cold cup of coffee. At 42, she felt much older. The wrinkles around her eyes told stories of laughter that had long since faded, replaced by the weight of survival. Her phone buzzed. A text from her daughter, Emma. "Mom, I got the scholarship. Full ride to NIU. Can you believe it?" Sarah's heart swelled and shattered simultaneously. She typed back with trembling fingers, "I'm so proud of you, baby." But inside, a voice whispered the truth she couldn't say. "How will I survive without you?" 20 years earlier, Sarah had been 22 when she held Emma for the first time. The hospital room in Detroit was small, the paint peeling, but in that moment, it felt like the whole universe had condensed into those tiny fingers wrapped around her thumb. "She's perfect," Sarah had whispered to herself, because there was no one else to say it to. Emma's father had left 6 months into the pregnancy, his promises evaporating like morning mist. Sarah's own mother had stood at the doorway, arms crossed. "You're on your own with this one, Sarah. I told you this would happen." But Sarah didn't care. She looked into Emma's eyes and made a promise. "I will give you everything I never had." The struggle. The years that followed were a blur of double shifts at the diner, night classes at community college that Sarah eventually had to drop, and birthday parties thrown in their cramped studio apartment with dollar store decorations and homemade cake. Sarah watched other mothers at Emma's school, women in pristine yoga pants, driving SUVs, planning elaborate playdates. She would arrive late to pick up Emma, still wearing her waitress uniform, smelling of grease and exhaustion. One afternoon, when Emma was 8, she came home crying. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Sarah had knelt down, searching her daughter's face. Madison said, "We're poor." She said, "You're just a waitress and that's why I can't have the new backpack." Sarah's heart cracked. She pulled Emma close. "Listen to me. What I do serving people, working harder, there's no shame in that. And one day, baby, you're going to have every opportunity I didn't have. I promise you that." Emma buried her face in her mother's shoulder. "I don't care about the backpack, Mom. I just want them to stop laughing at us." That night, after Emma fell asleep, Sarah cried into her pillow, muffling the sounds so her daughter wouldn't hear. The sacrifice. When Emma turned 14, something shifted. She started spending hours at the library, came home with books Sarah couldn't understand, talked about colleges Sarah had only seen in movies. "I'm going to get scholarships, Mom," Emma declared one evening, her eyes blazing with determination that reminded Sarah of herself at that age year before life had dimmed that fire. "I'm going to make it. We're going to make it." Sarah worked harder. She took her third job cleaning offices at night. She stopped buying new clothes for herself, wore shoes with holes in them, ate less so Emma could have more. When Emma made the honor roll, Sarah framed the certificate and hung it in their living room like it was the Mona Lisa. "Why are you doing this?" Emma asked one night, catching her mother counting coins at 2 a.m. to see if they could afford a graphing calculator for her AP class. "Because you're going to change our story," Sarah said simply. The distance. By the time Emma was 17, the distance between them had grown, though they lived in the same small space. Emma was consumed with applications, essays, standardized tests. Sarah watched her daughter transform into someone unfamiliar, confident, articulate, destined for a world Sarah could barely imagine. One night, Emma showed her mother an essay she'd written for her college application. It was about growing up poor in America, about watching her mother work herself to the bone, about the quiet heroism of survival. Sarah read it with tears streaming down her face. "You can't submit this," she said. "Why not?" "Because." Sarah struggled to find the words. "Because I don't want you to be defined by our struggle. I want you to be defined by your triumph." Emma hugged her mother tightly. "Mom, I am my triumph because of our struggle. Can't you see that? Everything you've done here, that's not something to hide. That's everything I am." The departure. The day Emma got the acceptance letter from NIU, a full scholarship, Living expenses covered as Sarah threw a party at the diner where she worked. All her co-workers came, and Emma's teachers, and even some of the regular customers who'd watched Emma grow up, doing homework in corner booths while Sarah worked. But that night, alone in their apartment, Sarah sat on Emma's bed and felt the walls closing in. "You're going to be so far away," she whispered. Emma sat beside her. "Mom, it's just New York. I'll call you every day. I'll come home for holidays." "I know," Sarah said, but her voice broke. For 18 years, you've been my whole world. My reason for everything. And now I get to make you proud," Emma finished. "Now I get to show the world what an amazing mother created." "You're not losing me, Mom. You're launching me." They held each other and cried tears of joy, of grief, of love too vast to contain. Move-in day. Sarah had saved for a year to afford the bus ticket to New York. When they arrived at NYU's campus, Sarah felt like an alien. Students everywhere, parents with expensive luggage, families who looked like they belonged in this world of ivy and ambition. She helped Emma unpack in her dorm room, met her roommate Aya, a girl from Connecticut whose parents were both lawyers. The girl's mother looked at Sarah with barely concealed pity. When it was time to leave, Emma walked her mother to the bus station. "I can't believe you're really doing this," Sarah said, holding Emma's hands. "I can't believe you made it possible," Emma replied. They stood there, two women in the middle of Manhattan, surrounded by millions of people, completely alone together. "Mom, there's something I need to tell you," Emma said, her voice shaking. Sarah's stomach dropped. "What is it?" "I'm scared," Emma admitted. "I'm scared I'll fail. I'm scared I don't belong here. I'm scared I'll let you down after everything you've sacrificed." Sarah cupped her daughter's face in her weathered hands. "Listen to me. You have already succeeded beyond my wildest dreams, not because you got into NYU, but because you are kind, and strong, and brilliant. Those kids in there, their parents gave them money. I gave you something more valuably. I gave you resilience. You've already survived more than most of them can imagine. You belong anywhere you choose to be." Emma sobbed into her mother's embrace. "I love you so much, Mom. I love you more than words can say, baby. Now go show them what the daughter of a Detroit waitress can do." The transformation. On the bus back to Portland, Sarah stared out the window at the American landscape rolling by our small towns and big cities, farms and factories, the beautiful, brutal geography of a country built on dreams and broken backs. She thought about her own mother, who'd told her she was foolish to keep Emma. She thought about Emma's father, who'd never known what he'd missed. She thought about all the nights she'd gone to bed exhausted, wondering if it would ever be enough. And now, Emma was at NYU. Her daughter was going to be someone. But as the miles stretched between them, Sarah realized something that took her breath away. Emma had always been someone. Sarah had always been someone too. All those years, she'd thought she was just surviving, just enduring. But she'd been doing something much more profound. She'd been loving someone so completely that she'd transformed not just Emma's life, but her own. 4 years later, Sarah stood in the crowd at Emma's graduation, wearing the first new dress she'd bought herself in a decade. Emma had insisted on buying it for her, but Sarah had refused. This was something she needed to do. When Emma walked across the stage, "Ye summa cum laude," the announcer said. Sarah's hands shook as she applauded. Her daughter, in cap and gown, looked like a miracle. After the ceremony, Emma ran to her mother, diploma in hand, and they embraced in a way that made everyone around them step back, recognizing something sacred. "We did it, Mom," Emma said. "You did it," Sarah corrected. "No," Emma insisted, pulling back to look her mother in the eyes. "We, always we." That evening, Emma took Sarah to dinner at a restaurant where the cheapest entree cost more than Sarah used to make in a day. Emma had a job lined up at a non-profit, helping kids like she'd been. It didn't pay much, but her eyes shone when she talked about it. "I'm not going to forget where I came from," Emma said. "I'm going to spend my life making sure other kids get the chance you gave me." Sarah reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. "You know what I realized on the bus ride back from dropping you off freshman year?" "What?" "That I'd been thinking about all of this all wrong. I thought I was sacrificing for you. But loving you, raising you, that wasn't sacrifice. That was the privilege of my life. You didn't take anything from me, Emma. You gave me everything that matters." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I spent 4 years at one of the best universities in America, and that's the most profound thing anyone's ever taught me." The letter. Years later, when Sarah was 60 and Emma was 38 with children of her own, Emma found a letter tucked into an old box of her mother's belongings. It was dated the night before Emma had left for Niue, written in her mother's careful handwriting. "My dearest Emma, tomorrow you leave for New York, and I will smile and be strong and tell you how proud I am. And I am proud beyond measure. But tonight, I want to write down what I'm afraid to say out loud. I'm terrified of who I'll be without you. For 18 years, you've been my compass, my purpose, my reason to keep going when everything felt impossible. When you were a baby, I promised you I'd give you everything I never had. What I didn't know then was that you would give me something far more precious, so you gave me meaning. But here's what I'm learning. Loving you wasn't about holding on. It was about letting go. It was about preparing you for this exact moment when you would spread wings I could never have and fly to heights I could never reach. If I did my job right, you won't need me the way you once did. And that's the most beautiful, terrifying success of my life. You asked me once why I worked so hard, why I sacrificed so much. Here's the truth. It never felt like sacrifice. Loving you was the easiest thing I ever did. It was the world that was hard. But you were always the simple, pure, uncomplicated joy in the center of it all. So tomorrow, I'll put you on that bus with a smile. And I'll come back to our quiet apartment and remember every moment of your first steps, your first words, every scraped knee I kissed, every triumph we celebrated. Every night I watched you sleep and wondered what miracle had placed you in my life. And I'll be okay, because you're not leaving me, Emma. You're taking everything I ever gave you and making it matter in ways I never could alone. You're taking our story, our struggle, our love, our persistence here, and writing a new chapter one can't even imagine yet. That's not loss. That's legacy. Go be extraordinary, my love. You already are. Always your mother, Sarah. Emma sat in her own home, her own children sleeping down the hall, her mother now gone 3 years, and she wept. She wept for the mother who'd given everything, for the childhood defined by love rather than imitation, for the American dream that wasn't about wealth but about the fierce determination to give the next generation more than you had. She tucked the letter into her own daughter's baby book, so one day, she could explain what it really means to love somebody, only that it's not about holding them close, but about preparing them to fly. And somewhere, in the space between memory and hope, Sarah smiled. Because in the end, the story wasn't about poverty or struggle, sacrifice or success. It was about a mother and daughter who proved that love is stubborn, relentless, transformative. Love could change everything. The end.